we want the world to understand that we do not want to come to the table as victims. That's not what we want to do. We want to come, we have our own ideas. We believe we can make a contribution towards sorting out this global challenge. It's affecting us the most. We have contributed the least, but that is not the conversation. We are telling the globe that we have ideas on how to sort out this problem. And we want Africa to be part of the answer. We are not going to accept to continue to be labeled as victims.
Good. But here is let me just be devil advocate. We have been talking about loss and damage, and those guys pretended they don't hear us. They don't want to accept any liability. And to my understanding, I think it's only Denmark who accepted it. I mean, I am correct to say only Denmark accepted, and it was like a couple of millions, just some small, those guys refused to accept. Here is another proposal. Okay, you guys keep fighting the loss and damage. I don't believe those people will accept that discussion because they don't want to accept it. Here is another suggestion. Just look at what's happening now. On average, every American, man, woman, and child puts out 16 tons of carbon every year. Europe does 6.5. China does 6 to 7 tons per person every year. Here, we're putting nothing, very little. Some of us put half ton, some put 1 ton. South Africa is the only country in Africa which put something out, which is like 6 or 7, like Europe, or because using a lot of coal. But that's an outlier situation. 53 countries were not putting anything. How about this argument? The world today puts out 37 trillion tons every year. And scientists say, no. You should be maximum at something 24 if you want to move towards net zero. If we accept that number, we are 8 billion people on the planet. And if we are all equal, and there is a question here, if our friends accept that we are all equal, but let's assume we are all equal, then every man, woman, child in the world is entitled to 3 tons. How about this assumption? We say, okay, 3 tons is the limit. You guys put out in Europe 6 or 7 tons per head. You need to pay into that trust the excess, 3.5 tons per person, multiplied by 450 million, multiply the price per ton, you put this money here. The polluters have to put that money there by international agreement. That is the cost of you. You use something, you pay for it. And everybody understands that. You pay for what you use. Then a country which only emits 1 ton or 2 tons, we say, okay, wonderful. We owe you 1 ton per person. Here's the amount of money. We give you that money. And if we do something like that, enable us to deal with a number of issues, like the Amazon, like the Congo Basin. Everybody tell us, guys, don't touch this, we need it. You need it, pay for it. Yeah, because the whole world pay for that. So we need to create that legal trust where money will be given to the guys who are not putting the carbon out and taken from the guys. That creates a market incentive. My point of view is that those guys taught us about the market. And they told us the market, the power of the market, etc. Even our Chinese friend, and we have a dear friend from China today, told us China may be a communist country, but it believes in the market. Correct? He said that. Okay, this is the market. Let the market force play out. The polluters pay because they are polluting right now. And now they have the incentive to stop polluting because they're paying a lot of money. And the developing countries, which is not putting anything, have good incentive to keep receiving money and to stay as good guys and go green. Why aren't we deploying the market forces and producing some kind of a global system where the polluters pay for what you use? And the guys who are going green receive compensation for that. If we look at that, the countries which are actually affected by climate change are all poor countries. And they are all non-polluters. Then they're going to receive a lot of money. Guys, go and build your resilience and go green, etc. That is a very simple thing. And then people don't treat payments as charity. I think the problem is the polluters. When they say, oh, we'll give you $100 billion, in their mind, it's a charity. You know, okay, I'm going to help you guys, you know, you are victims. But, you know, this year we have crisis here, we have COVID, we have that. I cannot do it. But if it becomes illegal agreement, it's not a charity. You pay for what you use. Would that be something we Africans should advocate? We say, guys, just pay for what you're doing. Instead of thinking that you're giving us charity. It's not a charity. Anyway, something to think about. But what is important, I think, is to try in your summit to develop a coherent African voice. We need one coherent African voice. 1, 2, 3, 4. And instead of going with 54 very weak voices. That's how to amplify, and I really look forward for that. Thank you. So that was about climate, and we talked about the rigged financial system. Then actually, the global order, or maybe you call it now global disorder, things are different now. And polarization, you know, the things are changing around us. How Kenya is going to navigate now when you have all these competing powers and a lot of antagonizing going on between these powers? I imagine you are pulled this way and you are pulled that way and you pressured here, pressured. How are you going to navigate that to maintain the best path for Kenya?
Well, I think you made a very powerful point. I don't know why you don't want me to respond to it, because...
No, you're free to respond to anything. Did I stop him responding? You have the mic.
Because you have made a very powerful point about emitters and what do we do about this whole space where we're having a conversation and it's not quite coming out, and it's looking like, as you put it, it's charity. We're trying to help those guys. They are victims. You know, they are affected. That kind of conversation. And I really wish what you're saying would happen, because Kenya would be among the countries we would be receiving a big check, because our grid is 92% green. So we would be looking at that opportunity. But because of the way things are, you know, and we have to be brutally realistic about what is it that we need to do. I think the first step, even before we go that far, is we need to do carbon pricing.
Yes, absolutely.
That's where we need to.
Yeah, and what I'm suggesting is carbon pricing.
Yes, we need to do carbon pricing. It must be understood so that it is empirical, it is scientific, that this amount of carbon amounts to this. Yeah. Step 2, we need to work on carbon markets. That is all we're asking. We need to work on carbon markets. And these carbon markets must be worked on with integrity. Yeah. Today, we have carbon markets at 10%, at 10 US dollars. We have carbon markets at 200 US dollars, depending on who it is, on what you think it is, on, you know, it's a floating.
The integrity of the certificates.
The integrity of the certificates is not guaranteed. we need to agree because we are in this together.
Yeah.
And I think that the sooner we all realize that this is not us versus them, this is us on one side and existential threat on the other side, then we will put our act together. Once we work on carbon pricing, once we ensure that there is carbon, the carbon credits have integrity,
yes.
Once we work on carbon markets, then we move to the next stage, and we must, countries, continents like ours that are sequestering a lot of carbon, there must be a consideration, you know? I was having a conversation with President Museveni. He's a good old man. And we were having a conversation about what do we do?
Excuse me, you said good old man? I'm not trying to cause trouble, but I just...
I was having a conversation with him because he's my neighbor.
I know.
And I was in Uganda the other day. So we were having a conversation, and he was telling me how he's working on making sure that he gets the oil out of the ground. He's working on a refinery. He's working on a pipeline. In the context of all this fossil fuel climate change debate, and I was asking him, how are we going to, you know, to marry what we're doing, what climate change? And he was saying, up and until somebody tells him why he cannot use his fossil fuels, and who is going to compensate him for not using his carbon fuel, while others have used theirs and developed their industries, then he will continue until somebody convinces him otherwise.
I understand.
And I find that conversation, you know, you cannot argue with him. You know, those who are telling us don't exploit have developed beyond measure because of exploiting. And then, all I'm trying to say more is we seriously must have this conversation. I have taken the decision in Kenya that we are not going to exploit. We have oil in Turkana. We have worked with tallow oil, but we have said we will not go that direction because we want. But you know, when we say we are not going, when we forgo our resources, what do we get for it? You know, there must be a candid conversation. So what happens? So that it is not a conversation of, oh, you know, you guys, you cannot do this. You have to keep the forest. You have to keep Lake Victoria. You have to invest in the environment. And we are doing all this so that what happens? You know, this is the conversation more that we need to have.
No,
and hopefully we will get down to the bottom of it, and we will get a balanced conversation so that we get the benefit of the carbon sequestration that is going on because we are not emitters and we are not contributing to the emission. And I couldn't agree with you more. The principle, even in Kenya, is that emitters pay. And that's how it should be.
Absolutely. And I was smiling before because when you talked about the carbon market, because tomorrow we are launching an initiative here about the African carbon markets, and it's going to be led by two very competent people. Dimalola, is she here? Dimalola? Where is she? She gone to sleep. And also we brought the man who designed the European market, carbon market.
Okay.
And we launched it because we need to find a way to really produce acceptable qualification for our certificates, because it is very low priced. And why we pay so much for sequestering so much carbon here, but you pay double or triple amount if you do it somewhere else? It's the same stuff, but it's the issue of the companies who produce these certificates to actually bring them on board also to see how we can improve that. But that's also one step in that direction.
I have some small ideas. Would you allow me to speak to them maybe?
Absolutely, they are at disposal.
Okay.
Yeah.
I would really value.
Natalie, where is Natalie? No, we acted straight away. I mean, Natalie, where is Natalie? She's not going to sleep also. I mean, what is wrong with those people? She was here. Right. Can we just arrange for really communication? I mean, are you taking that into account? But I think the valid point here is a very interesting point here is how to produce a coherent African voice. This is our problem. Our voice is very faint, as not there. In the Glasgow COP, 37 countries and institutions, or 39, decided, oh, we're not going to fund African gas. We're not going to fund. And following that, we were in a meeting in the Africa Summit. I don't know, were you elected as standing on the Africa Summit in Brussels? The last Europe-Africa Summit. And we had this conversation with our European friends. And Chancellor of Germany was sitting there. And I asked him, I said, I found it very strange. You are wallowing in Russian gas. Half of African gas exported to Europe, actually. 50% of our gas exported to Europe. And then you say, we cannot use our own gas. We now have 600 million people without power. Where is that morally? How can you beat that, you know? And that was 6 days before Ukraine invasion. When say, oh my God, you know, now we have no gas, let's go to Africa now and get African gas. So all now investing in African gas because you need the gas. So we need some really consistency here. I will not use the word morality because you are here, I don't use tough words, okay? But we need some more, here, Natalie, you're not, I thought you went to sleep. We need to, the initiative on the African carbon market, the president is interested to link with that because also of his conference, so an important, can you please
yes.
sort it out? Thank you very much. Right, we'll move now a little bit from the global issues because I think we don't have much time, maybe, I don't know, to the region here. And if I look at the map, you are an island in a troubled neighborhood. Maybe Tanzania is good, is at least safe enough at the moment, and I hope to stay safe. But you have soldiers in 3 countries around you, people trying, peacekeepers to pacify things, etc. That may end up being 4. If we send people to my country in Sudan, we're going to need your soldiers, by the way, there sometime. Now, this is a tough situation for you because this neighborhood is not nice. Really, it's not nice. I mean, of course, they're beautiful countries, but what's going on is not nice. Does Kenya feel a little bit anxious? I mean, with all these things around you in the border, do you feel a little bit insecure here as Kenyan that with all these crazy guys around us, what's going to happen here?
Well, it is true that we live in a tough neighborhood.
Yeah.
Because we have a 1,000-kilometer border with Somalia, which has not had a functional government for 40 years, 30-something years. We have a border with South Sudan. They have major challenges. We have in the neighborhood also in DRC, where we have our soldiers trying to pacify the eastern DRC. We take it as a responsibility because we know that our stability, our security is intricately intertwined with the stability of our region.
Yeah.
And we believe using the architecture that exists, whether it is East African Community, IGAD, or indeed I was having a frank conversation with my brother Musa Faki as the AU, that it is really time that as a continent, I shared my thoughts with Musa Faki, that as a continent, we must take charge of our destiny.
Yes.
We must take charge of our security. 60 years after the formation of the Africa Union, we cannot continue to depend on Europe, the EU, the US, China, and I don't know which other place, to manage our own affairs. I think it is time. And that is why we took the decision in DRC. We didn't look for resources from, I don't know which organization. We used Kenyan resources.
Wagner, you heard about Wagner?
You know, we are at Uganda. We agreed that every country should deploy troops using their own resources because we need to take charge of our region. These are our issues. We need to deal with the security of our region because if we do not deal with the security of our region, we are foregoing opportunities of investment, of job creation, of growing our economies, and we are basically working against ourselves.
Without peace, there is no development.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
So,
but let me ask you a question.
Even the situation in Sudan, we were having a conversation, I know it's your country, we are having a conversation in Uganda day before yesterday.
Yeah.
And we were having the conversation on how IGAD, unfortunately the chairmanship of IGAD is currently in Sudan. So it becomes very difficult because...
Here is a Sudanese guy, make him chairman, yeah? In absence of a legal government, we volunteer this guy.
In fact, when Sudan was given the chairmanship, it was because of Hamdok here, when it was a civilian government. But now we have a general, you know? So that is our region. So we were having that a candid conversation because we believe it is our responsibility.
Yeah.
We were having a conversation with Musa yesterday because we believe as AU, we should sort out these problems.
Let me ask you a question here.
And we have what it takes to sort out these problems.
That's wonderful, but instead of one country bearing the brunt, I mean, this is costly also.
It is.
Developing your boys to go and do this, I mean, it's very costly. There was a proposal many years ago, and correct me if I'm wrong, our chairman. You guys decided to have a standing army for Africa. And that was many years ago. Where is that army? Why? That was a decision made. People said, look, we need, if there is terrorists took place here, these guys took over this country, we need to have a ready standby force, which ready under the command of the African Union, and it will go and do it. And instead of sitting back, oh, France, come help, Britain, America, come help, why those guys should come and help us?
They should
why
not.
Should come and fight our fights?
They should not come and help
It's
us.
our own fights. And then we brag. We say we have half the world population in young people. Where are those young people? Go and fight your country, you know? And so maybe we bring you the conversation. My brother Musa, tell us, where is your army?
I think we should not disturb Musa. Musa, I perfectly understand.
He's your friend.
No, he's not. He perfectly understands. We have the wrong architecture in the management of the Africa Union.
Yes.
Yeah?
I'm glad you said that. Yeah, okay, not me. Yeah.
Musa Faki, who is the chair of our Africa Union Commission, can do very little because we have retained all the powers as heads of state.
Right.
And yet, you cannot run one country and run the continent of Africa. Right? We seriously need an interrogation of the management of the Africa Union. Today, we cannot even support Somalia. We are waiting for EU to give us $85 million. $85 million. You know, we cannot fund it as AU. It is stupid. I mean,
My brother.
it is madness. So are you telling me 54 countries, 60 years after independence, they cannot manage 85 million to sort out Somalia, which has no government? Let me.
I just want to ask him, sorry, I want to ask you a question. He's my brother, but we need to talk frankly. How many African countries did not pay their dues this year? Please tell us. Don't name, but tell us how many. How many countries did not pay
their contribution?
The contribution this year?
I think the majority paid.
Majority paid. This is the answer of a diplomat.
Yeah, let us not put Musa in trouble.
No, but these are facts. It's not, I mean, I'm not naming countries. I'm saying African countries do not respect their own union. If you don't respect your own union, nobody respects you. Full stop. And then, the same guys who don't pay their contribution, they go to this international meeting and say, oh, African sovereignty, African solution for African problems, Africa this, Africa that. Come on, guys. What is this? We need to be credible. If we believe we have an African Union, we need to have an African voice, we need to do it. My understanding is your operational budget, my brother, is really paid by the European Union. This is a fact. This is a public knowledge. It's not secret or whatever. We are not paying for our own operational budget for African Union. We are not. And then we said, okay, we're going to have a standing army under the African Union. And we went and talked to Europeans with big arguments about, oh, we don't give arms, we don't. Ukraine changed all that. Now, Europeans are willing to give arms if needed. And we say to them, instead of sending troops, come and arm this Africa Standing Force. That solve your problem, solve our problem, and you guys don't like Wagner. That's the way not to get Wagner. Our boys go and do the fight, but we need the helicopters, we need...
Let me say this more.
Yeah.
Let me say this to save our face.
Yeah.
That
you started this, not me.
Yes. We have a challenge. And the positive thing is that there is a realization that it cannot continue this way.
What are you going to do? How are you going to fix the African Union?
It cannot continue this way.
How are you going to fix it?
We have what it takes to fix it. And the conversation is already begun on what do we realistically do to be able to get the African Union to take charge of the affairs of our continent. Let me give you a case in point. We decided, for example, that we are going to assemble our market using the Africa Continental Free Trade Area market.
Yes, that's a good decision.
Ecosystem.
Yeah.
And the positive thing is that it was unbelievable at the rate at which we were able to achieve consensus and we were able to achieve ratification. And I want to tell you, it is among the things that happened in the shortest time possible. It tells you there is greater realization that unless we act in concert, unless we act together, we are unlikely to make any impact anywhere.
How many African presidents are on board?
We have, at least on the market issue, we have put that together. There is a debate that is going to evolve. Like, for example, we have also decided that it will not going to be business as usual. We have these meetings, Africa, US meeting, Africa, Europe, Africa, Turkey, Africa,
India.
Now we are waiting for, there is another one, Africa, Russia.
And Africa, Japan.
And Africa, Japan. We have made the decision that it is not intelligent for 54 of us to go and sit before one gentleman from another place. And I mean, And sometimes we are mistreated.
Yeah.
You know, we are loaded into buses like school kids. You know, and it's not right.
Well, you are summoned, you know.
It's not right. So the decision that we have made as AU is that going forward, if there is going to be a discussion between Africa and any other country, we are going to be represented by the chair, the outgoing chair, the bureau.
The chair of the commission or the chair
and the chair of the Rex, and we have 5 Rex. That should be sufficient for, I mean, a meeting of maybe 6, 7. Yeah. That should be able to represent Africa. And that is the position I am taking as the president of Kenya. For any other meeting that we are going to have with all these requests, that we have a meeting between Africa and one other country, we respect the sovereignty of others. I think to ask for reciprocation is not to ask for too much.
No.
And for us to agree that let us have this kind of setup. The only, because I had a conversation with President Kagame, and he actually led that particular position. I have had a conversation with Prime Minister Abiy. He believes very strongly that that should be the position of our continent. Because, as you have said, if we don't respect ourselves, nobody is going to respect us. And we should be able to take that kind of decision. Yeah. And part of that respecting ourselves is when we say African problems, African solutions, we must be serious about the solutions. It cannot be rhetoric. It cannot be talk. It must be accompanied by what realistically and practically we are doing.
And with our capacity, yeah. No, this is wonderful, but just one question. Why are you having this discussion in closed rooms? Why don't you bring civil society, all those people in this discussion? Because we can also put pressure on our leaders or whatever to behave in a better way. African people need to tell their presidents, we care about Africa. That should be a priority. Unless we act really together, it doesn't work. And in the reform agenda of the African Union, if you and your colleagues are proceeding that way, there need to be really a serious discussion about the structures and how Africa is. One problem is African countries refuse to cede any sovereignty to the African Union. So African Union cannot sign a trade agreement in behalf of Africa. Then the African Union go and meet the European Union. This is not balanced.
It is not.
Because those guys had
27 countries,
gave them sovereignty.
Yes.
But our guys here don't want to give any sovereignty, cede any sovereignty to the Union, as if, you know, this is something very fantastic they have to keep. When countries like Germany, like big countries, agreed to cede sovereignty to the collective body because they are smart. They think when they are together, they negotiate better deals.
Are you saying?
The only stupid guys, unfortunately, are the British, who left that collection. But look, I'm free to say that because I'm also a British citizen, and so I have my views about what happened in Britain. I know we have British. Jane is there, the High Commissioner, and the Archbishop. And I have the minister here also. But do you agree with me it was a mistake to leave the European Union? You agree? You're going to lose your job, I think. Anyway, BBC is not here, don't worry. Nobody watch Kenya TV, so don't worry. Anyway, so... no, it's not a joke. I mean, it is truth. I mean, it is a mistake. Together, we're stronger. We do things better. And that's what we need the African people to press their governments. We need to be stronger. We need to have our union. We need to cede some of our sovereignty for the African Union. I'm not losing sovereignty because our collective sovereignty is huge. Then we are somebody which can be respected around the world. We go out there in Europe, oh, we Africans, we African. I want to ask you, seriously, what do you mean you are Africans? You are South African, you're Nigerian, what do you mean you are Africans? Where is your government? What decisions you are able to make? What is Africa? Unless we have an African Union and a joint, a will, and then it doesn't work. So you made commitments now in front of all these people who are going to fight for that case. Is that correct?
You have my commitment, and not just me, by the way. I think a critical mass of African readers is building on how we should act together. I told you, this particular position of consolidating what we need to do and how we need to engage with the rest of the world was actually driven by President Kagame.
Excellent.
We've talked with many other heads of state, and I think there is a critical mass emerging that we need to act differently. We need to work smart. Let me tell you of an unfortunate situation. I visited one of the countries, I don't want to say which one, and we were having a conversation about the economic partnership agreement between EAC and the EU.
Yeah.
The EU, 27 countries, 520 million people have agreed on what we need to do. EAC, we are sizable, 170 million people. Then one country, and I don't want to say which one, refused to sign. So he said, no, we need to teach these people some lesson. So I'm listening. Your country has 11 million people. What are you going to
Now we know the country. Anyway.
So what are you going to teach 520 million people who are supposed to serve as your market? Really? So sometimes we undermine our own case because of not acting properly. So I want to promise you that it is our challenge. The realization alone that we have a problem is halfway the solution from where I sit. So we know that we have to change stuff. We know that we have to act in a manner that makes sure that we secure our interests, because the whole discussion, the whole discourse is about interests. What is our interest? How do we protect our interests? Because everybody protects theirs.
Yeah.
So this is awakening, and I think the engagement of Africa with the rest of the globe is going to change. That is why, for example, we are having the Climate Action Summit, because we want to go to the UN. We want to come to the UN General Assembly. We want to go to COP28 with an African consolidated position, speaking with one voice, the whole lot of us, so that people can know we know what we want, and we will not back down.
This is wonderful. If any value for this discussion is, I think we reached some interesting commitment from the president here. No, it's useful, the commitment made by the president. My only suggestion is that mobilize the people, have trust in the people, because the pressure from the people can help produce. Get the civil society into your summit. Get them to press their governments to really to move behind you in this agenda, because that has to happen. And until you get the people behind you, everybody will drag their feet. And that's the history of Africa.
I agree with you 100% that we need to mobilize the people to be with us, to share the vision with us, to agree with us on the paradigm shift in what we need to do. I agree with you, the civil society have a big role to play, because they can do sometimes what governments cannot do. And even in Kenya, we have a robust civil society. They have made a huge contribution to who we are today. Sometimes as governments we agree with them, sometimes we don't agree with them, but that is the nature of life. All I ask of our good friends in the civil society space, including you, Mo, is always to look out for the interests of the people of our continent.
This was a thought-provoking discussion that covers everything from climate change and global finance to regional security and the African Union's challenges. President Ruto brings bold, articulate energy as he calls out global inequalities and pushes for African-led solutions. The president doesn't hold back, calling it rigged against African countries. High interest rates, biased risk ratings, and slow responses to African crises. He says it's time for change, and fast. On climate action, Kenya is hosting a major summit to give Africa a real voice. The president flips the script. Africa's not just a victim, it's part of the solution. He also pushes for carbon markets where polluters pay, and Africa, which sequesters carbon, benefits. He criticizes how 54 African nations meet separately with global powers, calling it ineffective and disrespectful. A shift towards smaller, united delegations is already in motion. Regionally, he gets real about conflicts in Somalia, South Sudan, and DRC, stressing African-led security. And when it comes to the African Union, he's honest. It's struggling, underfunded, and needs reform. Fast. There's hope too. The African Continental Free Trade Area is gaining momentum, showing what's possible when African nations work together. Bottom line, this was a candid, bold, and at times humorous conversation. The president lays out a vision for a stronger, fairer, and self-reliant Africa. Like, comment, and subscribe for more deep dives like this. Catch you in the next one.